So in terms of thinking about the bandito that I referenced earlier, right, we could talk about him as a stereotype that has particular character traits, that behaves in a particular way, that dresses in a particular way. But just as importantly as the way that that figure or that person and those characteristics are placed within a narrative, right? And the bandito emerges in cinema at a time when there's a great level of interest um, in the Mexican Revolution on the part of the public in the United States. So the press is covering it widely. There's a lot of debate about whether or not the U.S. should intervene, right? And what the bandido is kind of a strange distortion and misrepresentation of the Mexican Revolution, essentially. And this is not necessarily something, this is kind of on the surface of those films, that the revolution is kind of run by a bunch of inept and violent people. Mexico is ungovernable, its population is ungovernable, and the Mexican government is ineffective. And essentially what has to happen is some kind of American intervention, right? So within these narratives, you have kind of these white heroes either defeating the bandido or kind of stepping in and solving the problem that the bandido couldn't solve, right? So it's its function within that narrative that definitely was a part of, emerged from ideas about the Mexican Revolution, but also you have to imagine also shaped ideas about the Mexican Revolution, particularly in relation to discourses about whether or not the US should intervene, right? In addition to and aside from ideas of racial and ethnic superiority and inferiority, for sure. So that's one example. The other example I would give, and probably from the current media, is less linked to a stereotype or a character as it appears in film, although sometimes it does, which is this concept of the illegal immigrant, right? This kind of figure that's like this figure of speech or a discursive figure that's talked about frequently, that I think very much, whether or not this illegal immigrant appears on screen as a character, and they frequently do, I think this kind of figure, this stereotype, this idea very much shapes the way we talk about immigration, and in some kind of very important ways. The first off is it characterizes or mischaracterizes an entire group of people, labeling them first and foremost, before they're anything else, they're illegal, right? And that's the first thing that we're always kind of, that's very leading and very misleading in terms of understanding immigration. And as we also know, immigration is a kind of broad and complex process, right? That involves a number of decisions, that has a number of causes and has a number of consequences, and is essentially a product of the way the global economy is structured. But it's kind of reducing the issue to this moment, the breaking of the law, the crossing of the border, right? And it kind of reduces the issue and the debate to this moment, instead of thinking about it in a more complex or full way that allows us, through the mainstream media and through the debates, to make kind of more informed decisions based about policy, about what we should do, right? So in terms of talking about illegal immigrants and legal immigration, because it focuses on this moment of crossing the border, the solution then becomes, for politicians and certain members of and the media, building a fence, right? Because this is the way, this is kind of the discourse that circulates through a figure like the illegal immigrant, right? And the way that, even in and of itself, it seems and may seem innocuous, but definitely restricts the way that issue, the entire issue, is talked about.